guys, welcome back to Dimitra's Dishes. So today I'm going to teach you how to make a Greek-style olive bread, also known as Eliopsomo, and you need just a few basic ingredients. You need, I'm making with half whole wheat and half white dough, and you can refer back to my homemade bread video that's on my YouTube channel and as well as my blog. The only different thing that I did, that's made with all-purpose flour and bread flour, actually white flour. This one is made with 3.5 cups of whole wheat flour and 3 cups of white flour, so it's more rich and dense and hearty, and it's perfect for this recipe. So if you like whole wheat bread, use this recipe. If not, go ahead and use my regular homemade bread recipe, and that's going to work just fine. You need some black olives. These are different from Kalamata olives, and I highly recommend that you do not substitute Kalamata olives for this recipe. These are, you can find them in your like a Greek specialty food store or in a Middle Eastern, Mediterranean specialty food store. Sometimes they're known as Moroccan olives, but they're the black olives. They kind of look like big giant-sized raisins. They're really, really good for this recipe. You need a little bit of semolina flour or cornmeal, anything you have. I usually always have semolina flour in my pantry, so I'm just going to use that. A little bit of dried oregano, a glass of ice water, and that's it. And then you're going to need a half-sheet pan to bake it in. So first what we do is take about a grapefruit-sized bunch of dough. And I made this about a week ago. I like to keep dough in my, especially bread dough, in my refrigerator all the time because you never know when you're going to need to make it. And I like to make bread often. It's so much better than the store-bought kind. Once you start making it, you're going to become a huge fan and you're going to have it all the time just like I am. This dough recipe lasts 2 weeks, so it's worth making double batches of it every week. Okay, so all I'm going to do is flour my work surface just a little bit. You don't want to put too much flour because we're going to roll this out, and when we fill it with our olives, we don't want it to we want it to come back together once it sits. We don't want it to form like a layer. So I'm just going to roll it out into a rectangle. Okay, so now I'm just going to take some oregano and sprinkle it on top like that. And as many or as few olives you like. I like a lot, so I'm going to use about a cup of sliced and pitted olives. And I'm using dried oregano, but you can feel free to use rosemary, dill, whatever your favorite herbs are. Mine is dried oregano, so I'm using that. And now what you're going to do is you're just going to roll it up. And this looks like a lot of olives, but they're actually going to spread out into the dough once the dough rises. I'm going to tuck the ends. And then I'm just going to roll it one more time. You could just leave it in that one long roll. But I like the way this looks. And I'm going to kind of form it without ripping it completely apart into a round ball. Sprinkle some semolina flour on the bottom of your baking pan. And this is going to create that bakery style, fresh, nice crust on the bottom. You put it in your pan and then find the warmest part in your house and let it sit there for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Now this doesn't really double up in volume because if you're using whole wheat flour I should say, it's more dense, so it stays a little bit smaller than it would have risen to if you make it with 100% like white all-purpose flour. But since I used whole wheat flour and half bread flour, white flour, it's not going to be as big after an hour and a half, okay? And the warmest place in my house is actually outside my house. It's a little room that I have that doesn't have air conditioning or anything, and it's perfect. It's really warm. Right now it's summertime, so we're in Houston. It's like 99 degrees over here, so in an hour and a half it's going to be just the way I want it to be. If it's cooler, it might take 2 hours, it just depends. Just make sure that it's nice and room temperature when it comes out and it has risen a bit. And I have one to show you what it looks like. Now, as you see, it has not doubled up in volume or anything. Let me show you the difference. This is what we started with. This is what we ended up with, right? But it has risen a bit, and it is ready to use. So I've preheated my oven to 500 degrees. There's a baking, like a pizza stone in there, and that's really important if you're going to be making bread a lot, or pizza, or any kind of bread dough. Get a pizza stone. I talk all about it in my pizza making video. Make sure you get it. And I also have a cast iron skillet right there on the first rack of my oven closest to the bottom, and that's where I'm going to pour my water in there, and that's going to create steam in my oven and give that bakery type look to my bread, and it's going to give a nice crust on the outside. So I brushed this with some of this water. I'm going to cut some slits on the top. Now you can cut them however you want. This is going to allow the bread to rise and expand more. Okay, so I have my oven preheated, like I said, to 500 degrees. I'm going to put this in. As soon as I close the oven door, I am going to reduce the temperature to 450 degrees and just leave it alone, not open the oven, for about 30 minutes. At 30 minutes, I'm going to take it out and check it. And it's probably going to need about 5 more minutes at that point. I'm going to take it off of my baking sheet and let it continue to cook on the baking stone. And that's going to give more of a hearty texture on the outside. So I'm going to put this in my oven. And just like I did in my regular homemade bread video, I'm going to pour this in the cast iron skillet so it can create steam. And it'll cook for about 35 minutes. I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out. Okay, so my olive bread is ready. It basically took 35 minutes to cook, so the last 5 minutes I just took it off of the rack. Not the rack, I took it off of the pan, the baking sheet, and then I just let it cook directly on the stone that I have. That's a pizza stone that I have in there. If you don't have a pizza stone, just let it continue to cook on your baking sheet and it'll be completely fine. You'll know it's ready when you knock on the bottom of it, and you hear that? There's a hollow sound that comes. That's how you know it's ready. Once it comes out, let it sit for about 10-15 minutes, and it'll continue to finish off cooking and while it's cooling down. And it's been about 10 minutes. Technically I should wait another 5-10 minutes, but I'm going to cut into it so I can show you what it looks like. And you always want to cut into bread with a sharp serrated knife, okay? It is so yummy. It smells very, very good. It's really hearty and delicious. Let me cut into this. And here it is. Look at that. So yummy. I'm going to dip it. It's delicious with anything, but especially with some feta cheese and some really good olive oil. It's super, super good. Go on my website, www.dimitrasdishes.com. I have the exact measurements on there. I love to hear from you. I love to read your comments, see pictures, post on my Facebook page or right down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everyone. This is so hearty.